Welcome back to The Explainer. If you are an infrastructure or security architect tasked with navigating the massive migration from IPv4 to IPv6, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're jumping right into part 2 of a massive 10-part tutorial titled IPv4 and IPv6 Transition Technologies, Architecture, Security, and Firewall Designs. We already know you've got a solid grasp of IPv4, so we're skipping the networking basics. Instead, we are going to break down the architectural reality and the serious security implications of the most critical transition technologies out there.
And let me hit you with a metric right out of the gate that proves exactly why we need to have this conversation today. As of 2026, roughly 45% of all users are reaching Google services natively over IPv6. The transition to IPv6, it's not some hypothetical future risk you can just neatly push to next year's budget. No way. It is a present operational reality. Major ISPs are already running IPv6 primary or even entirely IPv6 only networks.
The incredible insights and frameworks we're exploring today come directly from Chapter 2 of a comprehensive tutorial by Virtualization Options LLC. They're a highly respected Colorado-based technology research, education, and advisory organization. For this session, we are going to strictly focus on their breakdown of transition imperatives and the absolutely crucial firewall design implications you need to be aware of.
Here is our roadmap for today. 1. The reality of coexistence. 2. Dual-stack security risks. 3. Tunneling and ISAT-TAP vulnerabilities. 4. IPv4 over IPv6 infrastructure. 5. Essential IPv6 firewall design. And finally, 6. Security Architect Action Plan.
Okay, let's dive into this. Section 1. The reality of coexistence. Why legacy systems force a decades-long overlap. We really need to fundamentally accept that IPv4 address exhaustion is no longer just a warning, it is a concluded event.
To put the timeline into perspective, the IANA free pool was totally depleted way back in February 2011. That's a lifetime ago in tech. By 2019, all 5 regional internet registries had exhausted their standard allocation pools. You literally cannot get new public IPv4 allocations through normal channels anymore. But here's the catch. We can't just flip a switch and turn off IPv4. We are forced into a prolonged coexistence phase that's going to span decades. Why? Because legacy operational technology, industrial control systems, and older enterprise applications with hard-coded IPv4 assumptions simply cannot be rapidly re-platformed. We have to secure both.
Moving right along to Section 2, Dual-Stack Security Risks. Doubling the policy surface. From a security architect's perspective, remember this golden rule. Every single transition mechanism introduces a completely distinct attack surface.
By definition, dual stack means running complete IPv4 and IPv6 stacks simultaneously on every single node. The packets traverse the network end-to-end in their native protocol, without any translation occurring. Conceptually, super simple. Operationally, incredibly heavy. When we weigh the trade-offs, the advantages are pretty clear. You maintain full end-to-end semantics, there's absolutely zero translation overhead, and you can deploy it incrementally. But the disadvantages are huge. You are literally doubling your IP address management complexity, you're doubling your routing table sizes, and your DHCP infrastructure. And most importantly, it doesn't actually solve the IPv4 exhaustion problem, because you are still burning a public IPv4 address for every host.
Now, what's really interesting about this quote is that it highlights the single most common misconfiguration in enterprise dual-stack environments. Teams will spend weeks writing meticulous, perfectly crafted IP tables rules for IPv4, but then they completely fail to populate IP6 tables, which is an entirely separate rule set. The result? It's like bolting your front door shut but leaving the back door wide open to the internet. Let's methodically break down these dual-stack risks. Beyond the firewall rule gap we just talked about, you have massive scanner blind spots. Think about it. If your security scanners are only targeting IPv4 address inventories, a service that is perfectly hardened on IPv4 might be fully exposed and totally unmonitored on its IPv6 address. Then there's socket binding. If an application binds to the IPv6 wildcard address, which is represented by double colons, it usually listens on both protocols, effortlessly bypassing your IPv4-specific controls. And finally, unintended activation. Major operating systems like Linux, Windows, and macOS just enable the IPv6 stack by default. You might literally be running dual stack right now across your enterprise without even realizing it.
Section 3. Tunneling and ISAT-TAP vulnerabilities. Bypassing perimeter controls.
If dual stack doubles your policy surface, tunneling actively attempts to punch holes right through it.
Tunneling basically involves encapsulating one protocol inside the other to cross incompatible network infrastructure, kind of like a digital nesting doll. This typically utilizes mechanisms like Protocol 41. The fundamental security issue here is that these encapsulated packets inherently bypass traditional perimeter security controls unless your firewalls are explicitly configured to crack open and inspect inside the tunnel.
Now, tunneling does offer some strict deterministic control and allows the operator to explicitly set the maximum transmission unit, or MTU. And sure, it's pretty easy to monitor via ACLs. However, the disadvantages are brutal for modern networks. Manual configuration simply doesn't scale. It requires static administrative action at both ends. Furthermore, encapsulating IPv6 and IPv4 slaps on a 20-byte header overhead. This eats into your effective MTU and creates significant path MTU discovery fragmentation risks if you don't handle it perfectly.
A specific historically significant form of tunneling is ISATAP. It literally embeds an IPv4 address directly within an IPv6 address and relies on an ISATAP router to act as a controlled gateway. Back in the day, this was a lifesaver. It allowed early enterprises to deploy IPv6 in phases before they had the budget or the technical ability to do massive router upgrades across the board. But as a security architect today, you absolutely must view ISATAP as a major liability. It's an intrasite-only capability, meaning it can't even give you Internet IPv6 connectivity anyway. It is officially deprecated across all major platforms with zero path forward. And most critically, it is highly vulnerable to DNS-based router discovery attacks. If a threat actor can spoof the ISATAP DNS entry, they can hijack the entire IPv6 routing path for your hosts. Honestly, if you find this lurking in your network, your first priority is to rip it out.
Next up, Section 4, IPv4 over IPv6 infrastructure. The DS-Lite mechanism. So what happens when your core network is fully modernized to IPv6, but you still have to provide legacy IPv4 access? Enter IPv4 over an IPv6 infrastructure.
This is primarily achieved through Dual Stack Lite, or DS-Lite, which is defined in RFC 6333. In this architecture, the customer's router, the CPE, uses a B4 element to encapsulate the subscriber's IPv4 traffic inside an IPv6 tunnel. This tunnel is then fired straight through the IPv6 core network to the ISP's Address Family Transition Router, or AFTR. At the AFTR, the packet gets decapsulated, and a massive carrier-grade NAT44 is performed. This beautifully solves the ISP's IPv4 exhaustion problem, letting them share a tiny pool of public IPv4 addresses across thousands of customers while running a clean, modern IPv6-only core. But for us security architects, you have to understand that this entirely breaks end-to-end integrity because of that centralized NAT component. So, the crucial point is, Section 5, Essential IPv6 Firewall Design, rebuilding policy from first principles. Because the threat landscapes are fundamentally different, IPv6 firewall design requires you to rebuild your policy completely from scratch. You absolutely cannot just copy and paste your IPv4 rule sets over. Just take a look at this critical filtering table derived from RFC 4890 concerning ICMP v6. ICMP v6 is so much more vital to network operation than its predecessor. But certain messages absolutely must be controlled at routed boundaries. You have to block multicast listener discovery messages, that's types 130 to 132, from the outside. Router advertisements, type 134, must be aggressively blocked from external sources and unauthorized internal ports. Redirects, type 137, must be blocked externally to prevent an attacker from pulling a next-hop redirection. And send certificate paths, types 148 and 149, should only be permitted if you are explicitly deploying secure neighbor discovery. Beyond ICMP v6, you also need an explicit extension header policy. Unlike IPv4, where options are all baked into the main header, IPv6 chains extension headers together. Attackers know exactly how to abuse this. They know that poorly configured firewalls might get confused by long or malformed header chains and just let the malicious packets slide right through. Your firewalls must be explicitly configured to drop packets with unrecognized extension headers to shut down these evasion techniques for good. Finally, Section 6, Security Architect Action Plan, securing the Layer 2 domain. The perimeter is incredibly important, but IPv6 introduces serious new threats inside your Layer 2 domain that you have to lock down on your access switches. And this brilliantly illustrates the exact checklist you need to execute. Step 1, deploy RA Guard, as per RFC 6105, on all your access switches. This ensures router advertisements are only accepted from authorized uplink ports, killing rogue router attacks dead in their tracks. Step 2. Enable DHCP-v6 guard. This ensures DHCP-v6 server messages are only permitted from trusted uplinks, preventing an attacker from assigning rogue DNS servers. Step 3. Enable dynamic neighbor discovery inspection so you can validate messages against your DHCP-v6 binding table. And Step 4. For your highly secure segments, strongly consider implementing SEND, RFC 3971, to add actual cryptographic authentication to your neighbor discovery process.
I want to leave you with this uncompromising, stark warning straight from our source material. All 11 transition mechanisms require explicit, mechanism-aware firewall rules. Default IPv4 rule sets protect none of them. Whether it's dual stack, a Protocol 41 tunnel, or a synthesized DNS record, if your security appliances aren't specifically configured to inspect and control that exact IPv6 transition mechanism, you are operating blindly. So ask yourself this: if a highly motivated threat actor scanned your perimeter right now, would they find your IPv4 front door bolted shut, but your IPv6 backdoor wide open? Thanks for joining this explainer, and we will see you in the next one.